of a man. So therefore they're born into sin.
Okay, so they're born with a sinful nature. Okay? Any other reasons why the incarnation was necessary?
If we didn't have that, we would never be able to have our freedom. There would never be honour in being able to say, Father, you sacrificed your Son for us.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's you see one side of the Father where he wants to create us and he wants us there for him. And I don't know, maybe in a way people just took it for granted that this allows us to go to the Father and say, look what you gave up for us, as well as giving us so much.
So we actually see the depth and the profundity
You like that word.
of the Father's love. From a theological, purely theological standpoint, a legal standpoint, if you like, man sinned and came under the penalty of death. We find that related to us in Genesis 2, 3. We find, you know, God said, do not eat of this tree. They ate of the tree, and they came under the penalty of death. Genesis 2, 16 and 17. Adam and his posterity thus needed someone to redeem them from death. But all born of Adam's race, as you said, Danica, would be born in sin. And so they themselves needed redemption. You know, a man couldn't die for a man or take the place of another, because each one of them, born of Adam, needed their own redeemer. They needed someone to die on their behalf and take their penalty. They couldn't take anyone else's. Romans 5 verse 12 speaks about that. You know, Adam's sin brought death, and so death spread to everyone. All were under this curse. This meant that no one could by any means redeem another, for all needed redemption themselves. Spiritual law demanded that only a man could pay the penalty for another man. Now there was an Old Testament covering of sin through the death of innocent animals, but literally it just did cover sin. It didn't deal with it. It didn't take it away. It simply hid it away from the eyes of a holy God. It covered that sin. But year upon year upon year, those sacrifices needed to be made until the perfect sacrifice came and was made on our behalf. And not only did that cover our sin, it actually took it away. He took our sin upon himself. He took it away from us. Because no man of Adam's race could do this, the only hope was that God would provide a redeemer. God's answer was to provide the necessary kinsman through the birth of his Son as a man through a human vessel, but not from contaminated human seed. The Father of Jesus was our Father in heaven. The mother of Jesus was a human being called Mary, or Miriam, a young Jewish girl, most likely. Through the virgin birth, God brought forth a sinless human being through a sinful human vessel. Now, all the Catholic talk of, you know, Mary, the mother of God, and you know, Mary being somehow some divine being and all that kind of stuff is blasphemous at worst. Really, it is blasphemy, really. And in fact, the amazing thing is, Mary of all people would be the very last person to agree with all that junk. You know, she was a human being just like us. And this is the mystery and I mean, no man could have made this up. I mean, really, no man could conceive. Some people try and make out that this book was written by just a bunch of clever religious men. But, I mean, come on. Who would think up such a story? Who could conceive such a thing? It could only have been conceived in the heart of God. And right there, Moses penned right at the beginning that the seed of woman shall deal with this sin problem, shall crush the head of the serpent, shall deal with this situation, the seed of a woman, the virgin-born Son of God. It's amazing. It's just amazing. It's wow, wow, wow. Some of the reasons for the incarnation: it confirmed promises made to the patriarchs. It destroyed the works. It was to destroy the works of the devil. He was brought forth to destroy those works. You know, we just spoke about that now. To consummate the redemptive plan of God in his second coming and deliverance from the presence of sin. So he was born first and he will come again. To put away sin by the sacrifice himself. To fulfill the Old Testament offices of judge, king, prophet and priest. To bring into effect the new covenant. By his blood he brought into effect a new covenant, a perfect, better covenant. To live a perfectly sinless life for us to follow. That was one of the reasons he presented and gave us an example of perfect humanity. To give a complete revelation of the Father. And to fulfill the law, the Psalms and the prophets. These are some of the reasons that Jesus Christ was born and walked this planet. And there's probably so much more, and we could dive into any one of those and plumb its depths. Each one of those truths would be like a pool of revelation that we could immerse ourselves in and partake of and drink of yeah, anyways, but we won't right now. As God, Christ became a dependent man. Now, that's in the notes. We go into this in much more detail because the Bible talks about, in the book of Philippians, the Bible talks about this thing called kenosis, or where Jesus emptied himself. And, you know, people have had all sorts of considerations about what this emptying consisted of. Let me just have a look at the notes very quickly, because I didn't really I don't want to go into this in great detail, but it is worth just us touching on. In Philippians chapter 2 verses 6 to 8, it says, "Who being in the form of God thought it not robbery to be equal with God, but made himself of no reputation. He took upon himself the form of a servant, and was made in the likeness of men. And being found in fashion as a man, he humbled himself, and became obedient unto death, even the death of the cross." The meaning of this passage can be summed up as follows. Jesus was essentially one with God, but did not think this equality was a prized possession to be grasped at and retained at all cost. Instead, he humbled himself by becoming a man in order to die on the cross, paying the ultimate price for the redemption of the prize that he sought to possess, precious mankind. This humiliation required that Christ empty himself. This is known theologically as the kenosis theory. The expression "made himself of no reputation" means, specifically, it means to make empty, or to empty himself.